crazy.
100%.
Blows my mind.
So we are recording now.
Oh,
Welcome to another episode of Unbuttoned. We've got Celeste,
thank you.
singer-songwriter.
Where do I look?
That's your camera,
Okay.
but you can look here as well.
You can tell this is my first podcast, right?
Yeah, but you just mentioned before that you have been on radio. How? Why?
Yeah. How I? I've done a couple of radio interviews over the years, just for like community radio stations.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I did an interview with my friend and fellow songwriter. She actually runs this radio show called Indie Spotlight, and it's on J Air, which I believe is a Jewish radio station. And I was just there with her a couple of months ago, actually. And yeah, she interviews local artists
Right.
on a, I think, weekly basis or a semi-regular basis anyway, and just asks them a bunch of questions about what they're doing. So,
Yeah.
but other than that, I did an interview. I'm trying to think of,
I think that's so good to like support like local artists.
yeah,
To kind of like, because they don't have that, they wouldn't have that like marketing machine behind them, you know, and like, how do you get independent names out there, you know?
yeah,
Like you come on podcasts like this, which is basically an internet TV show,
yep.
or you go on, you know, community radio.
Exactly. That's it. And I think that's what we do. We kind of all support each other, especially being artists. And many artists do have dual roles, you know, because of the nature of this industry. I don't know how anyone can be a full-time singer-songwriter. I know that certain people do it. I don't know how they do.
We all have dual roles.
Right? Like any creative has a dual role.
You have a creative role, which is your passion, and then you have your muggle job.
Oh, I love that word, muggle job.
Yeah.
But it's true. You've got to have a couple of outlets just to survive in this day and age that we're living in, like with the cost of living.
Yeah.
Won't go down that track. But yeah, going back to what you're saying, I think we do. We support each other. You know, we've got dual hats, and for some of us that might be, you know, a radio gig or a podcast on top of performing or photography or whatever it is that we're doing. And yeah, I think those dual roles are good to have.
My problem is I have too many.
Yep. Well, but which one are you most passionate about?
All of them.
But all of them equally? Really?
Yeah, I don't know how I do it.
I don't know how you do it either.
I mean, I'm a all or nothing type of guy. Like if I'm interested in something, I'm like in it. Like I think yesterday was Sunday, right? Yeah. I like watched 2.5 hours of like YouTubes for FPV droning.
Now, because I'm like kind of a little bit unaware, is droning, that's where you've got the camera that's like taking a shot in the air, right? Like a bird's eye view?
Yeah. But an FPV is a first-person view drone where you have the goggles on.
I learned something just then,
And
first-person view. Okay.
Yeah. But like everyone, like you can buy drones like straight from the shop, and you just like turn them on and you use them. But I was like watching clips on how to make them.
Oh, right.
Which is just a whole nother level.
I can imagine.
Because I'm like soldering iron, components, like electrical work. I'm like, yeah, this is how I love this stuff. Not that I was getting white knuckle fever, like clawing the couch, but like I was just like, you go into this like YouTube wormhole of like just watching all of this stuff.
Oh, for sure. Just when you said soldering iron, for some reason I thought back to like year 8.
Yeah.
I don't know, what was it?
Electronics. Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Not that I knew what I was doing, by the way.
No, but you knew what a soldering iron was.
And that's about it.
Yeah.
But you know how to use one. Or you're learning how to use one.
No, I do know how to use one. Yeah, I did electrical engineering.
You did electrical engineering?
Yeah.
My dad is now pretty much a retired electrical engineer.
Oh, really?
Mm.
It's the hardest engineering you could do. Sorry for anybody out there that does any other type of engineering. But you can't see electricity.
Mm.
So
yeah,
it's the most dangerous.
I can imagine. It's so interesting, you know, because like my brain just struggles to compute anything kind of logical or analytical. So when it comes to like something like engineering and maths, which obviously forms part of certain occupations like engineering, my brain just shuts down. But when it comes to anything creative, my brain obviously lights up and I just feel intuitively like I can make things happen.
Have you always been like that?
100%. Although I feel like when I was a child, maths sort of made sense to me up until about grade 6 or year 7. And then from then onwards, I was just like questioning everything. You know, science class would come around and this happens because of this. And I'm like, but why? Algebra comes around and 2 squared equals, I don't know, I'm not going to sit here and say, and I'd be like, but why? And why do I even have to know this? And I just had this eternal questioning of everything, which kind of led me to spend more time in those lessons looking out the window and daydreaming, or being a bit of a class clown and just sort of making jokes with my peers.
So what happened in year 6? Because how do you go from like loving maths to like then be like, oh, I'm going to philosophize about the world? Why?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have
Did something happen?
I have reflected back on this throughout my adult years, and I think that it could be something to do with the fact that around that time my parents separated when I was in year 6. I think it was towards the end of it, and I think, you know, up until that point, things like maths, and I'm just using that as an example, I could very much tap into and I could very much do, because I suppose having a father being an electrical engineer, maths is very much how his brain works. And I love that because we're different beings. And I think it was just that, you know, having him there and having that sort of support in that way day in, day out. But then I suppose after my parents split and then not sort of seeing him day to day, I think probably could have contributed to some of that loss of momentum in those areas perhaps. And as a result, a real delve deep into my creative side.
Was your mum creative?
Mum was always interested in both mum and dad have always loved music, but when mum was younger, she had piano lessons briefly, and she wanted to sing. She really wanted to sing, but she was told by might have been her piano teacher or someone at the time not to bother because her breathing was all off. And I can't imagine anyone saying that to a child these days, but times were obviously very, very different back then. And
I don't think you can say anything to a child these days.
I don't think you can say anything at all. No, you're absolutely right.
Let alone your breathing's not right.
Exactly. So
teach me.
Yeah,
Teach me how to breathe.
that's the whole point of being a singing teacher, right? Teaching someone how to breathe correctly. Anyway,
Is this singing teacher still in business? Probably not.
they're probably dead by now. But look, I think,
Rest in peace.
exactly.
I'm not religious.
I think, that led her to, I guess, wanting to give my sister and I that opportunity. And
So she's living her dreams through you.
maybe.
Is your sister a singer as well? She's a
My
performer.
sister she's not a performer now, but she certainly
She's an engineer.
No, she's actually studying nursing.
Ah.
Yeah, she's studying to become a nurse. So she's gone down a different pathway. But my sister has always been interested in music. She's always loved music. She had singing lessons and piano lessons and did acting and dancing. And, we both did all of that. And she was into musical theatre before I was, and she actually got me into musical theatre. And so, yeah, she's always had that.
She older?
She is, yeah. She's
knew it.
18 months older than me.
I could tell she was older because when you talk about her, it's almost this. You're like looking up to her because she was like leading the way.
That's so interesting how you could gauge that.
I've got an older sister, so I was always in her shadows.
How many years older?
3 years older. But once I started doing my own thing, I realised that there's no shadow big enough for my personality.
I love that. Yeah.
Interesting. So your mum was like encouraging you and your sister to do all this stuff, and then your sister actually was, I guess, your idol.
Yeah, I mean, as a little sister, I very much looked up to her for sure. And it is interesting when you look back and reflect, because I always saw my sister as someone who just had it all together, as in like just someone that was the life of the party. She just attracted people to her like a magnet. She had loads of friends, both male and female. She, when we were growing up, she was the one with all the boyfriends. I was the one that was sitting at home on the piano just going, I don't want to really leave the house. We were very, very different. I would describe myself as an introvert, and I would have described her as an extrovert, and so I think, I used to think that to sort of really be in the creative space as a performer, that, to do that on somewhat a professional level, that you would have to be this extroverted person, this person that's just always wants to be around people, that's just always feeling this certain way, which I never felt, which is really interesting because I was never the sort of person that was like, look at me and what I'm doing. But at the same time, when you're a performer, especially as a singer-songwriter, you do want people to listen to you and to understand your message. But when I was younger and I was performing, I was quite terrified of it. Even though I knew it was a desire of my heart, something that I wanted to do and I felt the need to do, I was just constantly petrified. I guess performance anxiety, whatever you want to call it.
The nerves. The like. I suppose also there would have been an element of you seeing your sister do it. Be like, oh, can I live up to being like that?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I used to watch her and I used to think, gosh, she's just, radiating this confidence, which seems to come so naturally. And I want more of that. Yeah.
Do you still get nervous?
I do. I I very much like to describe it as I get overexcited.
Yeah. It's the same feeling.
It is the same feeling. I'm a big believer in the way that we talk to ourselves is going to determine our outcome.
Mm.
And so I'm a big believer in the words that we say to ourselves really need to be positive so that we can really look after ourselves. And I used to say things like, oh, I'm so nervous, I'm freaking out, I can't do this, and whatever that sort of self-talk might have been. Now I just channel it very differently. I'll say to myself, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I know it's because I'm excited, nervous, excited, but I'm going to channel that as a positive adrenaline, as a positive excitement. I'm not going to connect with a negativity. So whenever a negative thought comes into my mind, I'll just channel it into the positive version of that.
It's such a good way of like reframing it, like in your own head. There's a lot of, I guess, studies and evidence around that whole positive affirmation piece, and definitely the self-talk that we give ourselves in our own head, as well as what comes out of our mouth or comes out on text messages, I think is so powerful in framing up like your polarity. If you're going to be a positive person and you're supportive and you're encouraging, like you can't be that if you're constantly putting yourself down or doubting yourself.
Yeah.
You have to encourage yourself as well.
Absolutely.
And and then it's that whole piece around if you believe you deserve better, you deserve better. If you believe you can do it, you can do it. If you believe you can't do it, well, guess what? You're not going to do it.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more, Andrew.
Yeah.
Like, you've hit the nail on the head. And I think this is something that I've always believed. But certainly in the last handful of years, I've just believed it even more so. And it's funny that you should mention this because I'm reading The Law of Attraction at the moment. Have you read it before?
I think I've listened to the audio book. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd heard of it for so many years. And I don't even know why it's taken me this long to read it, because the general message of it has been spoken about and you kind of hear on various different self-help podcasts or books or whatever, and the basic message is that whatever you, kind of like what you just said, whatever you believe, whether it's good or bad, is going to happen. So if you're telling yourself that you're going to have a bad day because you got out of bed the wrong side, that is exactly what's going to happen. Alternatively, if you're telling yourself you're going to have a great gig because, that's what that's the message that you're giving yourself, then that's the vibration that you're putting out there, and you're going to have a great gig. If you're telling yourself that I'm going to stuff up the lyrics, I'm going to, have a panic attack on stage, that's exactly what's going to happen. You just have to tell yourself so strongly and so affirmatively what you want to happen. You've just got to believe it. There's no other way around it. It's quite scary actually how accurate this is. And I mean, there's a few examples over the course of my life that I could refer to, which I think are really powerful to share. And I mean, I can remember even, as a child, being in the car with like my mum and my nana, and my sister and maybe my little brother. And, you know, we might be going shopping. And I can remember my nana in the front seat sitting next to my mum just saying things like, oh, we're never going to find a park. Oh, look at all the traffic today. Oh, it's horrendous. Oh, we're just never going to find a park. Oh, goodness. And I would just listen to this negative narrative. And, you know, I don't think my mum knew any better because that's what her mother is telling her. So she's just breathing that energy in and sort of, okay, Mum, if you say so. And all the while I'm just thinking, this is not helping, because guess what? We would drive around for hours and hours on end in a small country town like Ballarat until we eventually found a park.
So you never found a park?
We never found a park because that law of attraction, whatever you tell it, it's going to work.
I mean, there's also that I can't remember who made the quote, but it's like if someone tells you 1 + 1 is 3, don't even engage. Just let them agree and walk away, because you're not going to change their mind.
No.
You know, people will believe what they want to believe. Like there has to be some element of intention or like drive, or they've experienced something and so they believe a certain thing, right? So it's kind of like, okay, well, you know what? Like that's fine. Whatever comes out of your mouth comes out of your mouth. I ain't going to change that.
That's so true. And you've just got to decide, you know what, I'm not going to connect with it. Yeah, absolutely. Everyone is entitled to their opinion.
Yeah.
But if you're not agreeing with it or feeling it, you can just go, okay, I've heard that. I'm not going to take it on board.
And then you mentioned then about frequency or vibration. 100% believe and agree with everything that we put out, or everything that you do has a vibration, has a frequency. You know, you came with a cup of coffee today, like that in itself has a vibration and a frequency when you're drinking your cup of coffee, because you enjoy it. You know, you enjoy a particular flavor. You enjoy a particular type of coffee. Like the text message that you send your friends, like that's all part of this vibration. You know, why are they your friends? Well, they're your friends because they like you as a person and what you do for them and stuff like that, right? So music plays such a big part of that because it's all about vibration. It's all about frequency, and it's all about invoking these emotions in, you know, the type of song that it is, you know. And it's also there was a study that was done about why whenever you hear songs that are from like your childhood, like when you're 17, 18, they're like they give you that nostalgic feeling, because when you're like 17, 18, the music that you're listening to is like heavily imprinted in your brain due to the frequency.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, isn't it? And it's what you're feeling at the time when you first hear that song. Maybe it's the event that you're at, or just the way that you were feeling at that particular age, at that particular point in time.
So what type of music do you like write, produce, create? What would you call it?
I guess the umbrella is sort of indie pop.
Okay.
I am pretty heavily inspired by, I'd say like a top 5 artists. So Kate Bush is right up there. Kate Miller-Heidke, I really love her music. Sarah Bareilles, Tori Amos, and Katie Noonan. I think they're sort of my top 5.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, all female singer-songwriters as well. But yeah, it's very much I tend to write from predominantly my own experience. Sometimes I'll write about maybe people in my life that they've got going something on. They've got something going on.
I understood what you meant.
The order of my words. English is my first language. They got going.
Sorry, it is your first language? What happened there? It's the lights and the camera.
They got going something on. They've got something going on, and I'm really empathizing with them, maybe, or I'm really feeling that for them. Yeah, so I find that's what I tend to write about. Yeah, it's either a personal experience that I'm having, and that doesn't even have to be a big event either. It can just be whatever it is I'm feeling on that particular day.
And do you what's the process that you go through for like producing your music? Do you do a little bit each day, or do you like just dedicate like 5 hours once a week, or like?
I tend to go in batches. Up until this year, I've sort of started producing my own music, and I'll outsource what I'm doing to a freelancer to do the mixing and mastering. And that's sort of been that's what I did for my second last release, and that's what I've actually been doing on my recent release, due out in a few weeks. But up until that point, I was actually just working with different producers, and I was quite fortunate to be working with some really good producers. Shout out to Curtis Hatton at Studio Truth, Trevor Carter from Studio 52. Both of those producers are, just really like on the Melbourne scene, right up there in terms of their talent and experience. I mean, Trevor's been in the industry for over 30 years. He's produced for, Delta, Missy Higgins, just to name a couple. I'm sure there's many more big names that I don't know of that he has produced for. And Curtis Hatton was originally from Brisbane, but he's been on the Melbourne scene for, I believe, like the last six, 7 or so years. So I'm really fortunate to have worked with some producers that are really, really good at what they do. I also had a really amazing experience with a producer from Townsville earlier this year, who I got connected with through Tanya Doko, the lead singer of Bachelor Girl.
Right.
So it's really interesting how one connection always leads to another.
Yeah, 100%. I think sometimes people forget the power of like 6 degrees of separation, or Kevin Bacon, you know. And if you're a real people person and you connect with people, like things will just fall into place, you know.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it just comes back to what we were saying earlier about the law of attraction. You know, when you're feeling a certain way about yourself and you're, feeling the positive vibrations, that you're worthy of good things, you're putting those signals out to the universe of what you want to attract, other people in this world want to meet you because they're attracting similar things.
100%.
Mm.
So when did you start like singing? Like when you were younger? Like
Yeah.
your mum was like, I'm going to put you guys into like singing lessons.
Yeah. So I can remember it pretty clearly in my mind, actually. I was sitting on the bench, I was sitting on a stool at our kitchen bench in our family house, and I was 5 years old at the time. And
You can
Mum
go back that far?
I know, it's crazy. Isn't it?
Oh, mate.
My mum had been looking through the Ballarat Courier, which is a newspaper in Ballarat. And she said to us, something along the lines of, "Oh, girls, I've been looking through today's paper and I saw this advertisement for choir lessons. Would you like to do it? I think it'd be really good." And she was just so positive about it, and I thought, "Oh, yeah, that sounds like fun. Sure." Like, you didn't have to twist my arm. And I have to say,
Didn't you just say before you're like an introvert?
well,
But like,
this is the whole thing though, Andrew, with the choir, where there's many other people, your voice just blends in quite nicely, so the attention is not focused entirely on you.
Right.
I just remember thinking, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. And anyway, the next thing, she called the choir conductor, if you like, and she organised for us my sister and I, to meet with him and have an audition. And it's so funny because I can vaguely recall this in my memory bank as well. But my sister being, 18 months older than me, because of her age, and obviously because of her talent as well, was accepted into the choir. And I was told that because I was 5 and the minimum age was 6, that I would have to try again next year.
What a crock.
Well, I cried.
Yeah, of course you
I
did.
actually cried 5-year-old tears.
Because you wanted to be there with your sister.
Yep, I
And you
did.
wanted
And I
to,
just
like-
I just wanted to start my music career young. Obviously.
Very young.
So I cried and he said, "Oh gosh, well, whatever it was he said at the time, I don't remember conversations. I'm more of a visual memory collector. But anyway, apparently he changed his mind and he said, "Okay, well, I'll let you in, but just so you know, it's going to be a fair bit of work, and you need to be prepared for it." And I was like, yes, I'll do it, whatever it takes.
Having a stern word to a 5-year-old. Shit.
No, he was very kind. I've got very fond memories of that time in my life.
And so, do you perform, or did you like perform? So you did the choir. At what point did you go, okay, I want to do like solo stuff?
Good
Was that like in
question.
high school, in like musical performances?
Yeah. The desire to do the solo stuff definitely for me didn't happen until probably about around the age of 15.
Yeah.
I was in the choir from age 5 till 16. And during that time was doing various other things. I started piano lessons when I was 8. I started singing lessons, I believe, around 12 or 13. I went through quite a few singing teachers throughout my journey. But
Did they teach you how to breathe?
wow, that's another good question, because no. My journey with singing has been a long one, or it was up until about the age of 21, when I met a vocal coach that just made everything seem so clear and so logical, and I learnt so much from her. The late Ray Banger, she had an incredible impact on me vocally.
The number one thing that she taught you, what was it?
Well, it was to breathe properly.
You can't be a singer if you're holding your breath.
So when it comes to singing, there's a lot of singing teachers will talk about breathing from the diaphragm. And I might be being controversial here, but I don't believe that breathing from the diaphragm is actually a thing. And my teacher taught me that as well.
So she taught you that breathing from your diaphragm is not a thing.
That it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
And that's for the reason that the diaphragm, being the piece of anatomy that it is designed to allow us to breathe involuntarily. That's the word I'm looking for, isn't it? Like it just happens. We don't have to tell that muscle to do its thing. It just does its thing. And so, because I struggled with this for years, especially as a young student, I was like, why do I feel like when my teacher says, push out the diaphragm, breathe from the diaphragm, why do I feel like it's not happening? And then when I met Ray and she taught me this deep breathing method, deep intercostal breathing, she calls it, which is essentially breathing from the belly button, right, the navel area, channeling it all there as against up in this higher diaphragm region, which we all know where the diaphragm sits, right? It's much higher than the belly button. And so when I learnt that method of the deep intercostal breathing from the navel area, it just made so much more sense in my brain, and in my body, than what it did to try and breathe from the diaphragm.
Maybe that's what people mean when they say breathe from the diaphragm.
Look, I think it could be. I think that word diaphragm gets thrown around a lot. I do. I honestly believe that it's just been mistaken. And the thing is, many singing teachers will say you have to be utilizing your oblique muscles. You have to be making sure that you're engaging those to sustain your sound, to hit those high notes, to get that momentum happening with your voice. And it's so true. That's what it is. And this idea that, that we can breathe from our diaphragm, get our diaphragm to actively work for us when it's involuntarily already doing that anyway. That's why it just never made sense to me. Whereas the breathing exercises that Ray taught me and the way that she explained them, and taught me how to utilize that area of breathing from the navel, the way that she described it all, the way she explained it, the way that I could then apply it and feel myself actually getting results from, deepening my breath and therefore strengthening my voice, because voice is basically balanced on breath.
Yeah, like you can't have a voice without breathing air out.
No,
or expelling
exactly.
air. So if you're fine tuning, your airways in the sense of utilization, and experience, then you're you're going to get the effect of a better vocal performance.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's, it's very evident. We only have to listen to someone that has a croaky or unconfident sounding voice. They're not utilizing that area of breath properly. And that's why.
The next time I come across someone with a croaky voice, I'm going to be like, You need to breathe properly.
Just say to them, you need to draw in your navel towards your spine. That's what my singing teacher used to say to me.
I'm not a creep. I'm not a creep. You need to bring your navel closer to your spine when you breathe. No, it's interesting how you said the number one thing is breathing. So one of the things that I've taken up, retaken up, is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, I love that.
And the class on Thursday, the guy who takes the class, he goes, "There's not a lot of breathing going on over there," and I'm like, "Shit, is that how come I'm so out of breath?" Because he goes, "You can't use your muscles if you don't breathe.
You're so exhausted from holding your breath."
Yeah. And I'm like, mind you, I definitely got winded on Thursday because it's a lot of chest on chest, and when you're on the bottom, that's a lot of pressure. But yeah, it's funny. Like he was basically saying, well, we need more deep breathing.
Yeah.
We need more breathing.
Yeah.
Breathing is critical to everything.
Oh, it really is. It really is. It's not just singing. It is. It's absolutely everything.
I mean, people have started their businesses to do with breathing. Breath work.
Breath work, yep.
Have you done any breath work?
I've done a little bit of breath work. I've done a couple of workshops or breath work sessions. Yeah.
How did you find them?
Yeah, look, I found them.
As a singer?
There were parts of the activity where I felt, okay, I'm getting something from this. This is quite manageable, or this has got me feeling good. But then there were other parts of the breathwork session where I wasn't feeling so good in my body. Although facilitators do mention that. They do say, if you feel a little bit lightheaded, or if you've got some physical symptoms going on that are a bit overwhelming, then that could be a sign of bringing up some trauma.
I think that's the whole point of it, isn't it?
Well, I guess it is part of the reason why people do it, but I've heard that it's also just any kind of breath work is good to tap into or to practice, just so that you're. Well, I guess from my perspective, I was just doing it because I'm always fascinated by learning new things and by anything that requires deep breathing. I'm always fascinated by. But yeah, I don't know if it's something that I would do as a regular thing. I might return to it at some point, but I feel like it's something that I would just keep. Like anything, I guess. Like even when you're in a yoga class and you're trying not to push yourself, I would just keep really close eye on how I'm feeling. And if I was at a point where, my body was not reacting well, then I would probably just sort of go into child's pose. if that was allowed.
Yeah, I tried to do yoga.
Yeah.
I'm like, I just can't do it.
What kind? Like vinyasa, nidri?
Bikram.
Oh, man. Oh,
yeah,
well,
I just went
wow,
into
you went into the deep end.
Yeah.
30 degrees, come at me.
Yeah.
No, probably even more. Is it like 39?
30, 34, 35. Yeah, and you sweat.
Well, see, I've done hot yoga and that's at about 29 degrees, which I'm okay with. But anything more than that? Did you get through it?
Yeah. When I was going regularly, I did get through it. You hate it to begin with, and you hate it at the start of every class. But then you just think to yourself, I've done this before. It's just a mental game.
It really is, isn't it?
But what I like about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is that it's very like it's all about technique. Doesn't matter how big you are, doesn't matter how small you are. It's all about technique. And it's kind of a little bit like chess, but with our bodies. With every action, there's an opposing like action or reaction. And, at that point in time, you may not get, the movement, but that's not to say it's not going to happen like later on as well, and then it's all about try to like be the dominant person and kind of, get them to submit. But yeah, like I'm fascinated with the whole technique side of things, and not, and working smarter, not harder. Whereas I think what I've done previously, like training wise, like at the gym, it's all about harder. It's just go harder. And I'm like, I'm at the age where I'm like, nah, I don't really want to work harder. I want to work smarter.
I couldn't agree more. It's actually interesting how you've mentioned that, because I guess going back to singing technique and breath technique, that is the way you've articulated that is exactly how I feel when it comes to singing and breath technique. I used to feel when I first started having singing lessons as a teenager, and right up until I met my late vocal coach at 21, I used to feel up until that point that training to your voice was like going to the gym. I can remember one singing teacher even sort of said to me, to get that sort of strong, powerful sound, you've just got to push your voice a little bit, not to the point where you damage it, but you've just got to push it a little bit, like when you're going to the gym. You just push yourself that little bit more. And it never sat with me in a good way. I thought, that's not helping me. But then, when I came across a good vocal coach that really went into the anatomy and physiology behind the breath and behind the technique, that's what I was thriving on. That's what I was loving. I was like, okay, now I feel like I'm seeing this voice, this instrument of mine, as they call the voice an instrument, for what it is, which is a delicate instrument that needs to be built up over time, carefully through a series of techniques. And it sounds like, that's what you enjoy about your jiu-jitsu, like the actual focusing on the technique rather than, other things that could be a focus point for some, like whether it's, some focus on the competitive side or just have this mentality of, push, just go at it, as against like, no, I'm really enjoying what I'm learning here behind the technique. I'm just really going to make that my focus point.
What if you could go back in time and give yourself some advice? What advice would you give yourself?
I think it would be just to not take life so seriously.
Shit.
Well, I just feel like, and maybe I haven't really touched on this during our conversation, but I feel like, and I've only come to this place maybe in the last handful of years, but I used to be so hard on myself, and I was, my negative self-talk was my self-talk in general was so bad. I wouldn't have even said things to my best friend that I would have said to myself back then. And I just, I can remember when I first...
Sorry, can I just go back to what you said just then? So you were so hard on yourself, you wouldn't even say those things to your best friend. Right.
Mm-hmm. My narrative was just so negative.
Why were you so hard on yourself?
That's a good question. I guess a lot of people are, you know. Maybe I didn't really have. I feel like personal development comes into it a lot, and yeah, I feel like in the recent handful of years, I've really been focusing more on how I can work on that part of myself. But who knows why we're our own worst enemies. But, you know, I can remember when I first moved to Melbourne to pursue my music career, and I was living with my partner at the time, and he was very supportive of me and sort of acted as a bit of a roadie at my gigs, you know, helping me carry around the heavy equipment. It was very welcomed. But, you know, I can remember the end of a gig and just being in the car, driving home to our apartment in Hawthorne. And I just remember, like, you know, debriefing about the gig with him, and I would just be in tears. And he'd be like, so what's wrong? I'd be, I just, oh, that was the worst performance ever. Oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore. Oh, there's too much pressure. Oh, I don't know why I put myself through this. And it was just a mixture of me putting so much unnecessary, unwanted pressure on myself. It wasn't anyone else. It was just havoc that I was, you know, that I was causing. There was really no one else to blame. It was just obviously a sign of my mindset at the time. And, you know, I took everything way too seriously. I treated each gig like it was my last bloody performance, when really I should have just seen it as a dress rehearsal for the next one.
Yeah, it's just funsies.
It's just fun. And at the end of the day, music is not is not surgery. You know, you're not performing heart surgery. I can remember someone that I used to work with many years ago said that to me, you know, like just remind yourself that at the end of the day, when it comes to music, it is enjoyable, it is fun, you're making people happy. And if you fuck up, pardon the French, but if you do, you're not performing open heart surgery on someone. You are going to be okay. And I think, like, that's exactly what you need to remind yourself of.
I think we go through life and we can have these expectations of ourselves based on what we view other people doing and other people's expectations. And maybe you were so hard on yourself because you just wanted to be at a certain level, yet there's like being at a certain level, wanting to be at a certain level and the level that you're at. And then if it's, you know, if it's a large gap or whatever, or even if it's a small gap, like, you can be way too hard on yourself.
Oh, 100%.
And, like, at the end of the day, it's almost this, you gotta, like, celebrate every win.
Absolutely. No, you're so right. You're absolutely spot on. And I mean, exactly what you've just said is what I had to realize, what I had to come to terms with, and maybe what many other people in the creative industry also need to realize as well. You know, we can have these ridiculously high expectations of ourselves, but for what? You know, we've just got to learn that we're all on our own journey. That's different for everyone, and you should never compare yourself to someone else. And you should always celebrate the small wins as much as the big ones.
I don't care who you are. I don't think you should compare yourself to anybody.
Exactly.
Whether or not you're creative or not, like, at the end of the day, like, what's the saying? Like comparison is the
Thief of all joy.
yeah.
Mm.
And it's just like, bro, like, just take a chill pill.
Mm.
Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think it's great to have goals, and you got to have goals.
Mm.
But as I've gotten older, I've realized, and like I used to be, anal retentive about everything like when I was younger, right? Because I was like, no, I'm going to take control of my life, I'm going to, all this type of stuff.
I'm in control of it all.
Yeah, and then I would get disappointed when my expectations weren't met.
Mm.
And it's like expectations of other people and expectations of myself, and so then I got really hard on myself, and then I ended up doing everything by myself, because I couldn't depend on anybody else. And then I was like, and then I felt like, yeah, I've got these like grandeur, like goals or things that I want to do, which is all good and well. But I've really come to enjoy the journey of getting there. Because if you can enjoy the journey of getting there, it doesn't matter how hard the work is.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of literature, a lot of stuff out there about like people in the fitness industry, right? Like bodybuilders, they do what they do because they love the journey. The result is just the outcome.
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason, they're weird and they love doing meal prep once a week because guess what? They get to do other things like and not spend so much time cooking, or like preparing meals, and like they love that particular process. They love that journey of doing that because they know it's going to give them a particular result.
Absolutely.
And so when I was a photographer, once I finally worked out what my style was, I could do my style like with my eyes closed. I just loved the journey of kind of like the process of doing it, And it's kind of a little bit like this podcasting thing that I've got going on now. It's like I love the journey. I love the process of doing it. And yeah, the outcome is an episode that gets put onto YouTube, but like I get to sit down with someone new every time and like learn lots of different things and share my story and listen to your story and,
Yeah. I really resonate with that so much. It's so true. I feel very much the same way about the creative journey that I have with my music, whether I'm collaborating, writing a song with someone new or working with a new producer. Yeah, that's a new relationship you're building, whether it's going along to see an artist friend do their gig. That's another artist I'm supporting and they're blessing me with their story and their music. And I can do the same to them, and that's huge. And even just, on a day-to-day basis when I'm either sending emails or applying for new opportunities or whatever it might be, even if it's something administrative and, let's face it, we we all get a bit drained by administrative duties, but at the end of the day, it's like, well, I'm doing this because I get to do this. It's coming from a place of gratitude, And I think as creators, we sort of have that responsibility of, okay, well, when an idea comes in, let's bring that idea into fruition for the greater good, because you just never know who that's going to help.
100%.
We just don't.
You have no idea.
Yep.
Someone's going to stumble across your account or your profile and see you on this podcast talking about this, and they're going to be like, I'm going to send Celeste a message.
Absolutely. They might just be inspired by something small that you have to say. It could be anything. You just never know.
I guess it is it's also what's the word? the pitfall of like social media is that there can be a lot of listeners and watchers, not a lot of doers.
Mm.
I've always been someone who, like, if I say I'm going to do something, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I've done something wrong, like I'll admit that I'm wrong and then I'll like try to fix it.
Yeah.
Like do something else, you know? But like, yeah. And I get that everybody's different. Everybody's not as online as someone else, you know, like you don't have to be.
Mm.
But yeah, it's just interesting. Have you found that with like social media? Like
Absolutely. And yeah, I tend to feel a bit the same way. I've always seen myself as more of a doer than a consumer. So perhaps more of a creator than a consumer. I have to catch myself or watch myself sometimes to make sure I'm not going down too much of a rabbit hole with social media in any way. And the thing about it is, you know, the positive is that we can stay connected with people, especially people that we really respect and admire in the industry. You know, friends that we make in the industry on top of friends who are non-musicians or non-creatives. So it's really good to see what they've been up to and what they've been doing. But then I do have to stop and go, okay, how much time I've actually been spending doing this?
Oh, you regulate yourself?
I start to regulate because and I try and use my time wisely now. So if I'm scrolling and seeing what people are doing, I'll make sure that I'm liking or commenting because otherwise it's a complete waste. But
that's so true. It's like if you're going to be on social media, don't just scroll because that's the death scroll.
At least send out like 15 likes or whatever.
just it doesn't cost anything to like something
so
or
easy.
like make a comment.
It's so easy. Like your fingertip barely feels it, like really.
Pisses me off.
But on the upside, you know, of social media, and the reason I'm here today, because if I hadn't have been listening to the episode with Jono, shout out to Jono Smallman.
Jono Smallman, he's
who is a legend.
Living up to his name.
He is a legend. You know, I do want to give him a shout out because I love this guy. He is a legend for anyone who doesn't know. He's like the Molly Meldrum of the Melbourne music industry.
I was going to say.
Were you going to say that?
No, I was going to say even like with a personality of like Elton John.
Yes. Oh my goodness. It's so funny.
Molly and Elton together.
It's so funny you should say that though, Andrew, because when I was watching that episode, you know how he was wearing those glasses with the orange lens or pink or whatever colour it was. Not sure because of the lights, but all I could think was, oh, yes, the Elton John vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he had like a little pin of himself, like a lapel pin.
I didn't see that part.
Yeah,
I was just too fixated on the glasses.
But yeah, he was just an absolute dude. Like, yeah.
Yeah, the love and support and encouragement that he has for the Australian music scene and locals on this music scene, it's just it's just phenomenal.
Just going back to that social media piece, I think there is a level of and this is something that I love about it is there's a level of vulnerability that you take on when you put yourself out there. Because you are going to get people that love you and you're going to get people that don't love you.
Yeah.
And there's just something about that I absolutely like admire in someone. If you're going to take the initiative to like put yourself out there and really try to connect or really try to engage with like your audience. That's so good. People need to do more of that.
100% they do. I know myself when I notice it in others that are really being their authentic selves and just have zero fucks. I'm like, I love you for this. I literally adore you as a human. And I want to hear more about your content as well and what it is you're doing, because I'm drawn to you by the fact that you're so vulnerable and honest. I think that's what people want these days. I really think it's what people are craving, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah. Certainly here in Australia. Because we're on a very big island.
Yep.
And we're kind of like stuck here.
Well, you kind of are compared to the rest of the world, aren't we?
Yeah. I'm yet to do a virtual podcast. Only because like this is a lot more personal.
Well, there's something authentic about it, isn't there? I couldn't agree more. I mean, just as I was driving here today, I was thinking that, a virtual podcast, like, sure, it would work. Anything works virtually these days, doesn't it? But there is just something so much more wholesome about these sort of experiences in person. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I just need to pack my bags and get moving. There's something coming up in the works.
Oh, stay tuned.
Yes, so stay tuned.
Ooh,
Yeah.
can't wait to hear about this.
Yeah. I might tell you after the podcast.
Oh, secretive. Love it.
I'm actually doing my first 4-way podcast on Thursday with the boys.
Awesome.
Yeah. Pizza and the boys.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good.
It's definitely going to be interesting because I'm definitely going to be heightened and anxious because obviously having one person's easy because I'm like, oh, it's only 2 cameras. And like 4 people, 4 cameras.
4 cameras.
The anxiety level.
Oh my gosh. That's it, right? You're taking yourself to the next level. So your old patterns are in overdrive going, oh.
But this is another clear example of I'm either 100% or I'm 0. It's like, you know what? Like I do all of this by myself and then I throw myself in the deep end. I'm like, yeah, let's try to like do this shit and see how it comes out.
Yeah. That's just how you have to approach life, isn't it? Right there.
Yeah, you just have to do shit.
Try and do this shit and see how it comes out.
Yeah. Because you will either get it done or you'll like learn a lesson.
Yep.
So it's all positive.
Exactly. You'll either win or you'll learn.
Were you always into personal development stuff?
I've always had an interest in self-actualization books. I've always, for some reason, it's just always been that aisle of the library or the bookstore that I've gravitated towards. But I think...
Have you read The Power of One by Dennis Whaley?
For some reason I was thinking the Eckhart Tolle book. Oh, that's Power of Now.
Power of Now. Very close.
I actually haven't read The Power of One. I've heard of it.
I got given that book when I was 17.
Wow.
And I was like, holy shit.
That's a young age to be given that book.
Yeah.
Was it life-changing?
It was life-changing, and then I fucking lost it. So I've got the audio book. Yeah. It was signed by the guy who gave it to me. Yeah, but I lost it. Anyway, that's fine. But that book changed my whole perspective because it was really about this piece of like you can really take control of your life based on the perspective that you see and understanding that there's always going to be minimum of 2 sides. I guess, which is this like negative versus positive, perspective. And, with everything that's going on in your life, you can see it as a positive, Yeah.
You can choose to see it as a positive or a negative.
Yeah, you can you can see it as either positive or a negative, and it kind of talks about how to see things as a positive. You know,
It sounds like an interesting read.
See it as a learning. Yeah. And it was yeah, and then like at 18, I kind of had something happen with my dad, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm just gonna be my own person. You know.
Yeah.
And then, and then in my 20s, I kind of went through that phase of trying to live up to other people's expectations. And then in my 30s, it was really trying to find myself. And now in my 40s, I'm like, yeah, no, I know who I am.
Yeah.
If I could go back and tell myself some advice, it'd be like, just keep making mistakes because you'll get there, and have more confidence in making those mistakes.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, have more confidence in making the mistakes. I like that. And don't be afraid to make mistakes. I felt like I struggled with that for way too long. Afraid to make mistakes, so I probably wouldn't even try.
I think a lot of people would feel the same way.
I think it's the way that we're conditioned in society to sort of think that way. A little bit.
I think it goes deeper than that.
It probably does.
I think it goes to our biology.
Yes.
And our behaviour.
Yeah.
Because when you think about it, like caveman days, don't do anything that put us in danger. Survival
mode. Yeah, true.
And I think we're not even out of our like primal tribal phase. We're still acting like cavemen, but with like mobile phones and technology.
Yeah, that's very true.
Because there is there was a study that was done about how fast technology has advanced and the impact that it has on the human body, and particularly the brain. The brain hasn't changed in millions of years. And technology is changing like this constantly. And maybe that's one of the reasons why there's been so many like mental health things, and because the brain can't cope.
Absolutely, because the brain simply can't cope. Yeah.
Simply can't cope. You know, we have to try to like put things in place like self-regulating your social media so you don't get FOMO, or like you don't start comparing yourself against that fitness influencer or these other influencers, or these singer influencers. Like, you know, don't compare yourself. But then it's like, I don't know, the machine is customized to, you can't get anywhere unless you're like locked in.
Exactly.
You know, and unless you know what's going on, unless you're an anomaly, you know, which again comes back to this art versus science piece. Do you be part of the masses and part of the herd, or do you just go straight out on your own and like try to do things on your own? You know, Albert Einstein.
Well, all the great pioneers in history did, didn't they? They stepped out on their own.
They stepped out on his own. Like what he was creating when he was doing his 10,000 experiments was art, because of the community that he was supposed to be a part of. His peers were like, "You're crazy, man. Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
No. And he was like, "No, I'm going to like keep, you know," I think he had Asperger's as well, but like.
But you're right, though. It takes 1,000 no's before you get a yes. And each one of those just can, you know, empower you.
And then what he proved, once he showed his evidence to all of his peers, his theories moved from art to science, and now they're the basis of everything.
Yeah, we've had some deep philosophical discussions, haven't we? I love it. Especially for a Monday Arvo.
That's what we do. Who inspires you?
Um, so musically or just
In general.
in general? Yeah, because I suppose I sort of mentioned musical influences earlier. In general, well, it's people like Regan Hillier, for example, that are manifestors, that aren't afraid to dream big and go for it. I think that we've lost our ability in today's society to be able to really listen to our own voice and our own inner being and what it is that we want. Or even if we think we know what we want, I think we've forgotten that we have the ability at any point in time to make that a reality. But we stop ourselves by self-sabotaging and by even thinking for a moment that we don't deserve it or we can't have it because it's not currently within our realm. And that's something that I feel like I'm overcoming at the moment.
So there's so much to unpack with that.
Oh, I know it could be a tangent, couldn't it?
I mean, we're all celestial beings. We all have the power.
I quite literally am. But yes, you're absolutely right. We are.
We all... Anybody can do anything right now.
Yeah.
The information to do anything is at our fingertips. You can have all of the support in place to be able to do the things that you need to do. The only thing that's stopping you is the own barriers that you put in your own mind.
Yes. Yeah.
You know, and so like manifestation, call it what you want, call it like positive affirmation, call it what you want, right? Like everything has been done already. You just need to work it out and understand that you can have everything. Sorry. You can have anything that you put your mind to, you know. God damn it, I was going to say something else, but I've forgotten now.
Oh, don't you hate those moments? I'm sure it would come back. But yeah.
The self-sabotaging, you know, I think is interesting because I think it comes back to like this expectation that we have on ourselves and our self-worth. Oh, I'm not worthy of that, so I'm going to like do something so that that gives me a valid reason as to why I didn't get there.
I agree. I think that's so true. It comes back to an old familiar pattern, doesn't it? And when we're by human default comfortable with old familiar patterns, we find it really hard to break free from those. And that can result in self-sabotage because sadly we are comfortable in old familiar patterns, whether those patterns are good for us or not. And I guess that's a classic example of why certain people would stay in an unhealthy relationship or come out of an unhealthy relationship only to go into a new unhealthy relationship because they don't believe that they are worthy or deserve more.
Do you know what neuroplasticity is?
Oh, I've heard that term and I've read a little bit on Dr. Joe Dispenza and his findings. But the actual term itself, it's not coming to me right now.
The ability to... I take it as, you know how there's that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Yep.
The reason that saying exists at the biology level is because the neurons are that strong in our brain that those pathways ensure that those behaviors remain.
Mm-hmm.
Neuroplasticity is the ability to create new pathways, the ability to learn new skills, the ability to pick up different things to what we're currently used to.
Yeah.
I think there is definitely a lack of neuroplasticity in the ability for people to learn new things. And part of that, I think, is, again, this like expectation thing, or like I deserve better, or like I expect this, I expect you to, like when if we just like remain open to all possibilities, remain open to all skills, or like learning new skills, then everything will be okay.
Yeah, so much of it is that, isn't it? It's just simply being open, which sounds easier said than done. But for a lot of people, opening up to a new thought process or a new pathway or a new mindset can just be, one of the most impossible things to do in life.
Yeah, mindset and changing your own mindset can be such a challenge.
Absolutely.
Because it's like, like if you've gone through certain things and if you do something, you expect a different outcome based on what you're doing. Like, of course, like your brain would go, well, how do I expect a different outcome? I'm doing the exact same thing.
But then it's also the definition of insanity, isn't it? When you do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result.
Yeah.
And it's not happening.
Yeah. So opening yourself up and going, you know what, I'm going to open up to whatever the universe throws at me, and I'm opening myself up to all the other different possibilities, all the other different, what do they call them now? Timelines in the metaverse.
Yeah.
All the other different possibilities and timelines, then maybe there's a timeline where I do get what I want. Or I do get that, because that mindset is the possibility,
Exactly.
Shit, we got real deep then.
I know.
Oh, talking about the metaverse.
Like I said, for a Monday, this is far out. This is an epic Monday. I love it.
Do you think we're in a simulation?
We're in a what?
What a great way to like break the tension with our deep and meaningful combo. Are we in a simulation?
I'm not sure.
Oh. Why?
I wasn't prepared for that question. Might have to cut that bit out.
I'm definitely not cutting that bit out. I only asked because I saw something this morning and I should have clicked into it. They're like, scientists have proven that we are in a simulation.
I've forgotten what the word means, so that's embarrassing for me, isn't it?
Like
all these fancy
like
words.
this life that we're living is actually controlled by someone else.
Oh.
Like the Matrix.
Oh, okay.
It's like the Matrix, right?
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Are we in one?
Yeah.
Well, maybe. Who knows?
Mm.
Oh, that's going real deep now. I'm like, gosh, I don't know if my brain's ready to go there.
Well, you did not expect it. I'm
I love that.
I'm glad you kind of didn't expect it. So what are your plans for the rest of this year and next year?
So plans for the rest of this year, which is fast coming to an end.
Too fast.
Too fast. I have a new single coming out either 23rd of October or 1st of November. I'm just waiting to confirm that.
By the end of the year.
By the end of the year.
Mm.
That's going to be backed up by, I'm predicting at least one full band gig, possibly a duo gig with my violinist. Look, just a whole bunch of gigs to promote that, really.
Are you touring?
I'm not touring this year. I do hope to be touring next year when I release some more new music. I would really like to do an East Coast tour of the country. And whether
good thing you live on the East Coast.
Well, it helps, doesn't it?
You're not going to do a West Coast?
Well, not at the moment, no.
No.
One thing at a time.
Yeah. There's more people here.
So this next single that's coming out, as I said, either early November or late October, is a little bit jazzy bluesy.
Nice.
Still with the indie pop vibe, but a little bit bluesy. The single that I want to release sort of March, April next year is going to be a little bit more of an expensive project because I've got a producer in mind that I want to work with that has worked with some big names like Tina Arena and Tanya Doko. So I'm keen to work with that producer. But until that's locked in, I don't want to sort of say too much. However, what I will say...
It's not Diddy, is it? Because he's not coming out.
It is not Diddy. I know you've got an obsession with Diddy. It is not Diddy.
What makes you think I've got an obsession with?
Because you mentioned him during the interview with Jono.
Oh, yeah. I just find it's just fascinating. I'm like, bro, what is going on? The money just went to your head. Literally. What makes you think you can get away with this shit?
Oh, you shouldn't.
Sorry, you were in a serious conversation then.
Yes.
So there's a producer that you really want to work with.
Really want to work with. I'm hoping like March next year because it's going to be a little bit of an expensive project.
Yeah, cool.
However, this particular song, I workshopped it, if you like, with Tanya Doko, and she loved it. Had some mentoring sessions with her, and she was fully behind it, and she recommended a producer, and she said, "Get on it if you can." So I've got a very positive feeling about this one, this particular track. Yeah, so
that's very cool.
That's kind of the plans for going into next year, and we'll see what else comes up.
So, do you play regularly at like a venue or like?
Yeah, look, the venues can differ. I don't have like residencies as such, so gotcha. I'm playing at different venues on different occasions.
Yeah.
But yeah, so in more recent times, from the last single I released, which was actually going back quite a few months ago, but anyway, I went overseas to America for 3 weeks, and that kind of threw my routine off. But it was well worth it because I got to see my little brother get married in Washington.
Oh.
And it was a beautiful trip. So, you know, it had to happen, and I'm very glad that it did. But yeah, that sort of threw off the routine for a little while, and I've just been since getting back into things. But up until that point, I was doing some gigs at various different venues to promote the last release. Some beautiful venues like George Lane. I was also supporting Rainy Zenith, an incredibly talented Melbourne-based singer-songwriter who actually went on to do a tour of her latest album, Polychrome Renegade, which is an amazing album. I love it. Highly recommend a listen. I was supporting her on the Melbourne leg of her tour at Open Studio just more recently. And I've also got a gig coming up at Kindred Studios in Yarraville which is going to be part of a Battle of the Bands
Hey.
type
Yeah.
competition thingy.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to be announcing that on socials tomorrow, Tuesday the 8th. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Sounds like you got a lot of exciting things
Yeah.
to, look forward to.
I'm very excited. Yeah, really excited, even just to be playing with some new musicians. Adding to the lineup with drums and whether it's bass or guitar or violin. So, it's great to be playing with some very talented new musicians. It's always exciting.
Well, how can people contact you, Celeste? Like, what's your social media?
Yeah, so Instagram is Celeste_Kate. Also Facebook. I don't use Twitter. I'm on TikTok. I think it's Celeste Kate Paulson. Surname comes in there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can just Google Celeste Kate and my music will come up across all the preferred platforms.
Amazing. Well, that's an hour and a half.
Oh, gosh, that's flown.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming along to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Let me take a quick selfie.
Yes.
Ooh. Amazing. Yeah. Lots of great things happening. Thanks everyone for listening in, and make sure you hit subscribe and that notification bell, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one. See ya.